So I wanted to show you the print that came from the woodcut that I've been working on. And you can see that almost all of it is just raised grained at this point that I'm printing. And then the block itself looks a little bit like this. I am using white pine shelving like I've instructed you all to use. And you can see in here that I'm starting to kind of follow that raised grain to excavate some more out of the block. And so by next class, I hope to show you kind of how this is developing and have the next run on it. I'm going to try and reduce this to 3 runs to complete or resolve the image. So hopefully I'll be showing you that all along the way. Okay, today I want to show you how to do kind of some monotypes at home. This is with a jelly plate. And this is not a very cheap thing to get, but it's very useful, and you can get a lot of detail from your printing on this particular process. But it's really just an example. You can use a plate of any kind. You can use the flashing we talked about, or even the plexiglass. If you were able to grab one of those from the studio, those work great too. The jelly plate just seems to kind of allow you to pull more of the ink off the surface when you're printing it. So I'm going to just use that today as an example. I'm using just plain old Strathmore drawing paper. I think it's the 400 series. I've always liked this paper. It's heavy enough but lightweight enough. And I'm going to pull out a sheet of this to print with. And the registration for this is very, very simple. And you don't need anything special like you do with the woodcut. I have made a pencil line along here, and that is going to be kind of where I line this paper up. I've already kind of measured this out by kind of looking at this and then looking at that. And I'm going to put that down here, along here, this way here. I like to use Scotch tape to secure this. So I'm going to just put a couple of pieces along here. So I actually put 3 pieces along the edge of that. And then I'm going to just fold that back out of my way and start kind of making some color on this, and then try to work up the surface. And I'm going to be printing it several times. You can use your brayer again to lay out some ink, and right now I'm just going to kind of put a background in here. So I'm not going to be too terribly interested about or too worried about defining an image at this point. This is like any kind of monotype process that you might have experimented with before. You can use stencils, and you can use tools to displace the ink, like a comb or anything that makes kind of a pattern and displaces the ink with its edges. A little bit more of that. Okay, I'm going to be really lazy. I'm just going to clean my roller off on a piece of paper. I'm not even going to clean it off fully. And I'm going to come in here. I'm using what's called open acrylics, but you don't have to use anything that fancy. You can use liquid pigment. I think Createx makes some nice things. So you can just kind of experiment with that. I'm mudding up some colors here. These jelly plates are a gelatin plate, and so they tend to be kind of just a little tacky, which also accounts for why they hold the ink and then give it up so easily. You can wash them off with like a degreaser, spray degreaser when you're done, and that works pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and just print this little bit that I have here. I'm going to start on this outer edge where the tape is and come across with my hand, and all I'm doing is just rubbing it really good. It doesn't require anywhere near the pressure that that your woodcut gets, and you can kind of see now a little bit that image that's come off of there. So I can just show that a little bit better to you. And then I'm going to go ahead and do some painting in here. Can I get some kind of a ground? If you use Createx or some of those other materials that are kind of available, a little cheaper than the open acrylics, these are golden open acrylics, and by that it means that it stays wet longer, it doesn't dry up as fast, so you have time to work on it and not worry about it drying. You can usually get like a little bottle of glycerin from the drugstore, and you can add that to something like liquid Createx to augment the drying time to make it stay open longer. I also think that you could probably just use, if you're using watercolors, just have a spray bottle that you would mist just before you print, and you probably have some good results that way too. So there's some things to play with. If you've got a spray bottle, that'd probably be the easiest thing to play with, and that's coming along. I can get this to turn just a little bit more so you can kind of see that I'm getting a lot of information off that plate. And now I'm going to go ahead and see if I can do something a little more dramatic with the plate. I do have a little bit of water here, and I'm going to get these a little more liquid. As you know, my work is mostly about nature, so I'm going to try and put a tree in here. And then I will probably add text later. I'm going to use a linoleum cut with text, and I'll also do a demo on that coming up a little bit later. And again, I'm going to put this back over, start on this back side, come back around. And it's really picking up a lot of that information. I feel like the edge is a little weak, so I'm going to come in here and see if I can give the edge a little bit more definition. You're going to have to work quickly with water-based stuff, not so much with these open acrylics. In fact, you can actually kind of mist your palette and put foil over it, and it'll stay for several hours. So if you're interrupted or whatever and have to come back to it. I also like the water-based. I think it's maybe a more realistic approach for some of you that have limited space to work in, and also not living with the kind of fumes that you get from some of the oil-based inks. Let's see if I can put something up there. Come back with my yellow. Kind of cheesy. Let's see what happens with this. Okay, and that sort of does it for this piece. Show it to you here. You can kind of see there's a lot being picked up there. I don't think it's the best piece of artwork in the world, but it gives you an idea of some of the things you can do with this process and how easily it is actually to register it and do several layers over layers.